race fans. Welcome to the Intentional Wreck Podcast, the podcast made by race fans for race fans from the casualist to lifelong gearhead. My name is Jeff, and I'm here with my fellow hosts Corey and Finn. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and iHeartRadio under the name Intentional Wreck. You can also find us on Twitter under the handle @IntRecPod. That's @INTWRECKPOD. And find us on TikTok under the same handle. Wow, it feels like we're here again very recently after the last time we recorded, but y'all would never know about it because OBS decided to play some tricks on Finn, and all of the 2-hour episode that we had found its way down the toilet last week. So we wanted to come back here and make sure we threw something out, and also maybe for the better because we've got some more information and got some more stuff to talk about.
I knew it.
Yeah, so we've got fellow Camry guy here of the future, Corey, and then tech wizard Finn over here, and we can talk over some of that if you like. We are coming fresh off of Iowa was now. If you're listening to this right after it's released, Iowa was a couple of weeks ago, and then we are a couple of days removed from the New Hampshire wet tire event.
Yeah, I think let's start with that, right? First of all, the last time I accidentally had a secret missing hidden episode that never got recorded, you guys reverse jinxed the Lions, and we went to the NFC Championship. So I don't know who we reversed.
Whoa. That was never...
I believe we predicted what was going to... I don't think there was a reverse jinxing. I think we acknowledged a quality football team is what we did.
You legitimately call... Dude, and I don't even think we... Didn't we just pick them to win the division? Wasn't that what we said?
We said at least the division will make a playoff run, if I'm not mistaken.
We know football too, bud.
All I'm saying is this, is if Ryan Blaney wins anything this year, it's because of that and not because of skill.
We're not doing that.
We're reaching now.
Ryan who? We're not doing that today.
Because it's all Chase. So, first of all, since today's going to be about Chase, I guess let's go ahead and talk about it. Wet weather tires, tire wear, once again has saved short track racing. I think everybody up to this point's favorite short track race of the year was probably Bristol.
Sure.
Right? And Iowa was solid. I don't know if you technically call that a short track, but it was built after Richmond. And that was a solid race, a lot of tire wear, a lot of strategy calls and scenarios. I think when the sun went down, it kind of maybe alleviated that tire wear a little bit, allowed that strategy call to be a good one. How did you guys feel watching them go 4 wide on the wet tires?
Well, I'll tell you what, if every race on a short track was run on wet pavement, Chase Briscoe would never lose, except for at New Hampshire, coincidentally, where Chris Bell will never lose. So it's just the same thing happened at Richmond. The start of the Richmond race was kind of wet, and Briscoe was at the top of the track killing everybody.
Right.
And we just saw it again. Him and Barry both really just kind of drove through the field. The first turn under green, I should say the first 2 turns under green, the pavement was wet. Bell passed 6 cars. And it's very clear that for whatever reason, these guys with a dirt sort of background, when it gets a little slick with the rain tires, something about the way those tires run on that pavement, it just works for Briscoe and for Bell, and I guess Larson to a degree, but Larson's always good. So.
Yeah. Well, I think somebody explained it as the asphalt guys or the short track guys, their skill is consistency, right? Hit their marks, perfect rotation, know exactly as the car's changing, kind of need to adjust that, but hit the preferred lane, get the nose pointed right, get off the corner well, get back in the gas, extremely better than everybody else. And that's what guys like Denny are just so dominant at, and all those short track guys. It seems like those dirt guys, their background in dirt is understanding where there is good and where there's not good and how that's changing from lap to lap. And I think that's maybe not so much slick. Obviously, slick is their forte, but their ability to just
find the grip.
Exactly. Some people found it low on the apron early. Larson had a lot of that. Whereas Briscoe, I was watching it back. Briscoe was on he made his own 5th lane It looked like it. And there was even times early in the race where Barry was taking it wide. And I'll tell you what, I really enjoyed that race, expecting a snoozer. Then again, I was on an 8-hour drive that day, so I had nothing else to do but tune into what was happening. Um,
I think that part of this is like to the point you were making, Finn, is it's some of the things that can really like tank those guys at times
mhm.
in other racing scenarios end up being their strength in situations like this. Because for Briscoe, for example, it's a perfect example of how many times have we watched him qualify well, get up somewhere in the top 10, run halfway decent through practice, qualify if there's practice, like he's looking halfway decent. And then the race starts and he's around traffic and he's trying to find where his lane's at, and he just drops like a rock
Right.
and finds himself somewhere back in the high 20s, like early 30s throughout the most of the race. And we really don't see him unless there's some sort of a track position type of thing that's going on, or a competitive pit stop that gets cycled around and he's towards the front of the cycle and then he drops. And what I'm getting at there is, in a lot of cases, when you watch, which Corey, I'm sure you can attest, is there are multiple times throughout different racing scenarios in which Briscoe is looking for a lane. He's running a different lane from it, he's running 5 laps in one lane and then he's running 5 laps in another. And he's in these different scenarios in regular track conditions, but it doesn't put him in the position to win or get him the speed to get himself out to the front of the pack. Then you put him into a situation in which he's supposed to adapt, and that ability to be constantly searching puts him in a place to try and win.
And that's the thing, is that it levels the playing field too.
Right.
No one's car is good on those tires. Yeah. So when no one's car is good, now it's who's going to find it faster, right? And to the larger sort of point about Briscoe, qualifying and practicing well, that Stewart Haas cars do not do well in traffic under normal conditions, period. Like if you get them out in clean air, they run away, but like they don't ever get there, so it doesn't matter.
Right.
But yeah, I mean it was really just a testament to me. I mean, like, I understand the Chris Bell thing. He's run there 11 times in National Series. He's won 7 of those races. That's crazy.
Right.
And Briscoe still almost had something for him there at the end.
Yeah.
It was really impressive. And honestly, my biggest takeaway from Loudon was, it just made me sad about what that Charlotte race was shaping up to be, and we never got.
Right.
Like, imagine what we could have had at 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning in Charlotte on Memorial Day, on the wet weather time. Like, it was all right there, and then just got taken away.
So,
wait, hold on. There is no wet weather tire at Charlotte.
Yeah, I was gonna say I was gonna be there 90% of that. I was there. If they would have done what they did here with the wet weather tires in Charlotte, I think that would have ruined a lot of it, because that's something else I wanted to get into and kind of get y'all's takes on. But like, for me, I'm glad they ran the wet weather tires. I'm glad that NASCAR took a leap and did something, but they need to improve on this. One of the things that I said in our group chat while we were watching, I said, I feel like this is going to be one of those scenarios where fans will be happy that they took the jump, and that this could be something that fans will like, but teams won't necessarily like. And what I was getting at with that specifically, more along, because one of Finn's replies was, we had guys, jump up 10 positions and move up quickly when they got onto the tires. So why would they be unhappy? Which I agree with. But to that same point, what I was getting at more along the lines was the actual race condition itself. I don't think any team is happy when NASCAR is telling them that the strategies that they want to implement are going straight out the window, and they're dropping everything to go completely flat and zeroing it out there.
This one's a no-brainer, because like, everything I'm kind of hearing is like, all right, well, it makes sense that they have to put the wet tires on when NASCAR says, right? But that should be the only time. Like, you have to put them on for this run. As long as pit road is wet, do non-competitive pit stops, fine. But when you guys decide you want to put the slicks back on, put them on. Let's go. Like, leave that to the teams.
Yeah, I don't. So I don't know if I'm with you on that one. To me, it's if you're going to run wet tires, fine, you make that the stipulation, but you don't tell people when they can change their tires or not.
Right. If you want to pit,
Like if we're running wets, fine, we're running wets, but don't tell everybody else when they have to, when they can, and when they can't pit to throw a new set of wets
Well,
on.
yes, I agree, right. But like if
I
once
wouldn't want to see dries and wet,
Right.
dry slicks and wet tires in out there at the same time.
Oh,
I feel like that could have caused some serious problems.
well, yeah,
dude,
well,
I'm
McDowell out there
I'm
alone is
tackling
a
pro
serious.
life world in the car.
Right. And Bush had his day too.
I mean, we looked at Chicago street race last year where we saw a natural transition where drivers could decide whether they wanted to, if the track was ready for slicks. And it ended up not being as big of a story because I think of a timely caution and things like that. But I agree that they should have opened. But again, I'm okay with the one time like this going, okay, because this was the first time did we start a race on wet weather tires in the past?
Richmond.
We started Richmond with wet weather tires, and that's a little bit different, right?
Briscoe was killing everybody.
Yeah, right. It was incredible. I remember. Yeah. So when we get to like this scenario, it's like, okay, cool. We've got 100+ laps across 2 races of wet weather tires. Obviously, pit road we've got to handle because it's not dry, and that's its own thing. Going forward how many more races are we going to require wet weather tire? We'll see. I think going forward at a minimum, it's got to be, hey guys, it's either wet or it's a dry condition, and we will tell you wet or dry, and those are the only tires you can put on. Now, we got to be wary because what if we're doing a whole race on wet weather tires now? I don't think that would
Goodyear's
happen.
going to be real busy.
Yeah, I don't think they can do that, man. I really don't.
It'll be like that 2008 Indy race where they had to throw cautions every 10 laps because the tires were wearing simply too fast.
That's like
or Bristol this year.
The point of the wet weather tires is for like what we had on Sunday, where like we got 70 laps we can get in here, or 8, whatever it was.
Right.
They only ended up running like I think 40 or 50 laps of green on the wet weather tires. They're not going to do 300, right? They don't have enough of the wet weather tires.
It'll get dry off that anyways, but
it's just not what they're for.
How did you guys feel about Stenhouse? So shout out back-to-back top 10s for Ricky Stenhouse, but there was so caution comes out, and the rule is under caution that you have to slow or you have to maintain pit speed or the pace speed, right?
Sure.
But all of those guys were slowing down to run through the water to get the tires cool. So Stenhouse just started passing people, maintaining pace speed, just driving fast, and he was trying to game the system. How do you guys feel about a unique scenario like that where guys are trying to go get tires, it's wet weather, but the rule is if he's able to pass 15 cars going pace speed, then you're not going pace speed.
Sure.
What's the thought there?
It will never happen again, and it doesn't matter because they were always going to send him back to his spot. I mean, it's a funny bit. If he was doing it as a joke, I'd laugh, but like, it's not ever going to be real.
I mean, it's a difference between like, hey, I dropped for a second to fix something on the car or whatever. Okay. Versus an entire front stretch of it. I just think it's an interesting case where either NASCAR needs to write the rule that it doesn't apply to wet conditions, or the rule is you have to maintain pit speed. It doesn't say to what mile per hour, right? But if you, you're not pit speed, but pace speed.
I'm no expert on NASCAR rules, but the one thing that I do know is that they all like come with a disclaimer that
NASCAR is not even an expert on NASCAR.
They don't care. They're just making it up as they go. That's part of the beauty of the sport, by the way, for the people who are new to it, is trying to get a grip on like the rules are kind of ever changing.
Right.
Like this was the first race ever in NASCAR history that I'm aware of, at least. Well, maybe not NASCAR history, but recent memory anyway, that in the modern NASCAR that ended on tires with tread on it. Like, wasn't a thing like even 5 years ago. So it's just constantly evolving and changing, which in a way that
it's
sports just don't do.
First oval, because I do think that COTA race, the first COTA race, technically ended on some treaded race tires, which they have. But yes, and it's interesting enough.
Disastrous, but yes, that was quite controversial to say the least. But yeah.
No, I think I mean, it was a fun experience. I think NASCAR's got a lot to learn with its rule set and things like that. But I'll tell you what, it could have been a way more boring experience. And I'll be honest with you, even though the actual race itself, without the wet weather tires, wasn't all that disinteresting. I thought it was, had some really solid restarts. Obviously Kyle had to work his way through the field. So that's always a fun experience. If nothing, the 5 car will figure out a way to get through the field. And of course, we saw some talent hop in. So
the verdict is clear though. The flat tracks are better when they're wet.
dude, do you think how on dirt tracks, they spray the water on the dirt tracks? Just do that for these. Just between every stage, you just send out the water tanks to go wash the track down and make it slick for all these guys.
The short flat tracks are just better when they're a little wet.
I had it's funny because I was expecting kind of another New Hampshire, kind of just a snooze fest.
Well,
right?
Eric Almirola isn't here to win a snooze fest, so
right. I was I had a bowling tournament on Sunday, and I knew it was going to cut into some of the race, and I wasn't even really that frustrated I was going to miss some, because what I had anticipated was I was going to finish up, I was going to come home, get there somewhere around the middle of the third stage, going to see that somebody had been, almost a full lap around. It was going to be, most of the field was going to be a lap down. It was going to be someone's running away with clean air there towards be anything ultra exciting. And then I get home and it was hour 3.5 of the 7-hour excursion that ended up being the New Hampshire race as well. So
I got 2 Game of Thrones episodes in in the middle of a race. It's pretty dope. So the main reason we're here today is that new news, the Chase Briscoe to Toyota. But before we do that, I wanted to do a quick little breakdown of Martin Truex Jr.'s illustrious and not quite complete career. Okay, but I wanted to break down that story because Truex Jr. is genuinely one of the most interesting drivers in the last, let's call it 15, 20 years. He entered the sport in 2001. So over 20 years of being in the top 2 series of NASCAR. Very interesting driver. So let's talk about it real quick. So comes from I think he's from the Northeast. And Truex comes from a long line of late model stock and some kind of ARCA East type, Busch East type series his dad raced. And he debuted actually in the Xfinity. It was called the Busch Series in 2001 for his father's team on a limited schedule. He developed a relationship with Dale Jr. and he drove in 2003, he started driving the 81 Chance 2 Motorsports Chevy. I don't know who exactly owned Chance 2 Motorsports, but it wasn't for DEI yet, but it was for Dale Jr. And he split time across those two, his dad's car and the 81 Chance 2 car. And then in 2004, he went full-time in Xfinity for Chance 2. And in his first full-time season in Xfinity / Busch, he actually wins the championship over another rookie, Kyle Busch, in the 5 Lowe's Chevrolet for Hendrick Motorsports. So he would debut in Cup a little bit. He did drive in for Junior. I don't know if you remember, Jeff, but Dale Jr. had a really bad accident in a sports car. And suffered some burns and was unable to race. So Truex Jr. would go in and drive the 8 car. As far as I know, there wasn't any significant races there, but he was just learning. But yeah, so wins the Busch Series championship in 2004. He would actually defend and go back-to-back in 2005, which would spark the move up to Cup to drive the number 1 for Dale Earnhardt Incorporated in 2006. So setting the stage, grassroots driver, right? Works his way up and wins back-to-back Xfinity / Busch Series championships with Dale Jr. and then goes to drive with Dale Jr. in the 1 with Bass Pro Shops on the car. So as we saw, that's going to be a thing we talk about here. So huge deal for him. As a rookie, he finishes 19th in points in Cup. 2007, he gets his first win at Dover, many consider one of his home tracks. And we didn't know it at the time, but as we know about Truex now, it was a dominant win. Truex doesn't kind of win on the last lap. When Truex wins, it's boring because he led everything. He led 219 of 400 laps, so over half the race he leads. He would make the playoffs that year. He finished 11 in points. So, again, back-to-back Xfinity champion. 2007, second-year Cup, gets his first win. 2008, no wins. 2009, DEI merges with Chip Ganassi Racing. The one car goes with that merger. Again, no wins in 2009, and he gets replaced by Jamie McMurray in the one. So DEI is pretty much folding. He gets replaced by Jamie McMurray, a Chip Ganassi guy. Has one win in, what did I say, 4 seasons. Okay. Then he moves over to Michael Waltrip Racing, right? Michael Waltrip was a teammate at DEI, drove the 15. He starts his, his own race team. 2010, he wins the All-Star Open, doesn't win any points races, has one top 5. All right, not so shot. It's a newer team. 2011, 18 points, no wins. 2012, no wins. He does have 7 top 5s, but no wins. It isn't until 2013 when he breaks the second longest race winless streak of all time between wins, right? Not obviously to no wins. Winning at Sonoma. Let's see here. It's 218 race wins. And then he does have, this is the thing we talked about in the podcast, the spin gate. So this is the year of the spin gate. He's competing to try to get a spot in the championship. And this was back, Corey, when a win doesn't guarantee you a spot, right? And I know we didn't get to talk about it last week, but the crazy thing where Jeff Gordon is kept out because Logano and Penske are working, colluding with Front Row Motorsports to give him a position. And at the same time, his teammate, Clint Bowyer, spins the car, and they believe it's intentional. So Truex, I don't know if he made the playoffs, but he was close. And then that's the end of his extent here at Michael Waltrip Racing. So it's the end of his second team. He's got 2 wins in Cup to this point. And I'm going to be honest with you, Corey, everybody kind of labeled him a bust at this rate. It was like, all right, Truex is over. Like, cool. I mean, he had a little bit of speed here and there, but just, remember how I was filling out Blaney when you first, it was like that, but way worse. It was just like, he wasn't even fast. It was just like, he's a couple tracks he's good at, but there's nothing.
That's 2, Jack.
Hey, I didn't even make the jab at where he finished. I admit Michael McDowell fucked his race.
Ryan, what?
So,
today's not that day.
So here we go. This is where everything turns. 2014, he's going to take over the 78, the Furniture Row Racing Chevrolet, right? The previous driver was Kurt Busch, who had basically been on that team because he'd been kicked off of any other team that he'd ever been on, right? Because Kurt Busch's attitude at that point was just horrible, not very looked upon. But he's out of the 78, and he comes. It's a one-car team. Right. No teammates. They're a Chevy team. He leads 1 lap all season. Finishes 24th in points. Again, just kind of furthering the idea that Truex is just a fill driver for a small team that doesn't have anything for it. 2015, in steps Cole Pern. Cole Pern is a rookie crew chief. They immediately have 14 top 10s to start the season. 14 of the first 15 races, he finished in the top 10. Tons of speed, was struggling a little late in races, which makes sense with a rookie crew chief. But he does get a win with Cole Pern at Pocono to snap a second huge winless streak of 69 races, and they make it to the Champ 4. So they go from just Michael Waltrip Racing to 1 lap led all season to boom, Champ 4. It's like, where did this come from? 2016, in steps Bass Pro Shops again to sponsor the 78 car for Truex, and they make a shift from Chevy to Toyota. This is where things started going crazy. He had his first multi-win season. He led all but 8 laps of the Coca-Cola 600 that year.
Jeez.
He led 588 miles. It is, to this date, the most miles that anybody has led in a single race. You want to go to sleep tonight, put on the 2016 Coca-Cola 600, and you will be out quick, okay? He won at Chicagoland, Dover, Darlington, and I believe another I don't know how deep in the playoffs they went, but obviously another playoff thing. And then in comes 2017. They win 8 races, 4 chase races, Chicagoland, Kansas, Charlotte, and ultimately Homestead as he wins a championship. It is one of the most dominant championship seasons of all time. I would say the dominance is a little overshadowed by the whole Final Four thing, but you win 8 races. I think he had like 19 stage wins and no teammates, right? So like we obviously know there's a lot of tracks where that doesn't play out well. And if I recall, I don't know, I mean, I know at least Joe Gibbs was Toyota, but he's not, Toyotas have always been undermanned in the sport since they joined. So he wins that. 2018, he wins 4 races, finishes second in points. And then after 2018, he would replace Daniel Suarez in the 19 for Joe Gibbs Racing. And they would win 7 races that year. Their first year, Joe Gibbs finished second in points. He's won 14 races total in the 19, finishing second in points twice. No championships yet. He still could win it this year. But, I mean, that's kind of the overview. I mean, seriously, I've never seen such a late bloomer in NASCAR. He went from a complete throwaway to pure dominance. Obviously, James Small stepped in at some point, and he's done well, right? They haven't replicated that kind of like prime when he first transitioned to the 19. But, I mean, I just want to do that, take a second. I know I talked a lot there, but just kind of shout out that we're losing a legend. I feel like I was very frustrated with Jimmy leaving, and now Kevin. I feel like we just don't get enough, like, coverage of what these guys did over their years.
Well,
so
true, but like Truex has been stringing this along too. Like it's kind of been like talked about since I've been following the sport of like when's he gonna retire? Because like
I will admit that
any minute now, and that's not NASCAR isn't a sport where you start forcing people out. He can still have a ride if he wanted one, right? But it's like they kind of retire by choice, and he's a well-known not super hard worker.
Right. I mean,
he just, but like it's like God-given talent, right, for him, and he spends all his time on his boat and whatever. So, yeah, I mean, like it's impressive. Like I've listened a lot and heard a lot about him over the last couple of weeks, since he's announced it. But I mean, you can't deny the go-getterness of it. Like he stuck it out with some crappy situations, and he made lemonade. There's no question about that. So.
Yeah, I mean, to this day, I don't think anybody has won a championship in a ride worse than a 78 in the modern NASCAR history. Not that it was a bad ride.
78 car right now, there's not, right?
Nope. Well, I don't know if there's a 78, but that team folded. So that team folded.
Wasn't Alfredo running that previously?
I don't know, but they folded. So there's that. Right. So it's not.
In the current sort of stable of cars, this would be like this would be like Ricky Stenhouse winning a championship.
Essentially, I feel like Ricky Stenhouse with a little bit like a better crew chief, some better stuff. But that's probably wild. Exactly right. Like and he's a long shot. And granted, it's a different world now. You did join NASCAR at a year where he went winless. I will say this though: the year before that, Truex was not considered a flameout. Truex was considered a Final Four favorite. Maybe it's the next gen. Maybe it's age. Obviously, he went through some extreme personal stuff, broke up with a longtime girlfriend, and then, of course, she passed away to cancer. Just a lot of things that are going on in a man's life that you never know are affecting the performance on the track. But either way, he's had... One of the things I've always known about Truex is there's some Truex tracks out there. He's got his handprint on about 5 of them, and you bet your ass that he's going to be up in the front at some point in that race. I mean, Dover, Richmond, Sonoma are 3, right off Charlotte are like 4, right off the dome. That like, you better be ready to be. You better have your best day, because the 19's not going to have a bad day, right?
Well, that was one of the high points of going to the Dover race last year. Right. Was what like being able to be there, and I mean that when you go to Dover, there are 19s everywhere.
Yeah,
right. At least now, right? And when you go there, being there at that point and watching him doing that rundown with Chastain throughout that, and listening to the whole place go berserk when Larson slows Chastain down, and you see like Truex start to gain, and when he passed. like the thing is going to a NASCAR race is usually so loud with the cars you don't normally hear the crowd. So when you do, it's memorable.
Right.
And when he passed Chastain that day, you heard the crowd
Right.
like at that
Everybody
point.
was a
And it was
Truex fan that day.
yeah,
Yeah.
it
No
was
one,
cool.
yeah,
There were
no one
there
was
was that
rooting
couple
for
that was in
Chastain.
front of us, and it was kind of funny because they were like, we were chatting it up like during the race, but also like it was like with a mild stink face because they told me why. They were like, look, I don't have anything against Denny. They were like, but every time we go to a race, and we go to a lot of races, Denny always wins every time that we go. So, they were sour on that. They were both Truex fans. So I was like, I was just happy for them because I was like, awesome. Like,
Right.
I've seen my guy win, like I want
Right.
you to be able to see your guy win too.
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, I always wanted to kind of like Truex. Obviously, the Dover dominance. I mean, it's hard to say Dover dominance because Jimmy obviously has 11 wins at the track. But those are very memorable things, watching Jimmy and Truex race together. Truex wasn't really a part of the Young Guns, was he? The Gillette Young Guns is what they were called. Corey, it was Denny, Ryan Newman, Jimmy.
Yeah, it wouldn't have
Uh,
been in that same
he was
quite like, yeah, it would have been parallel.
Yeah, I guess he's a smidge young, but older than Logano. This is so weird that makes Logano race. But no, I mean, he was cold, calculated. I don't think I've ever seen the 19 or Truex like get intimidated, make a mistake. If you're second to him trying to run him down, good luck. He is a great feel for where he needs to be, where he needs to put the car. I don't know where he struggles. It just took so long for him to break out and find the right match. And maybe that's the difference. Maybe Cole Pern and then to James, like that was the difference. So anyways,
It was also
yeah.
he also had like the other thing about Truex too is that like even for all of that, because that gets some drivers into trouble with their other drivers out there on the track.
Mm-hmm.
He's well respected
Oh, very clean
most
racer.
of the time.
Yeah.
Like you're
Yeah.
rarely ever going to see him run to lap traffic and see someone try and really like get up in front of him and go. You're rarely ever going to see somebody really get into it much with him. For the most part, like he usually has allies throughout the track, whether they're on the same team or not. People have a lot of respect for the guy.
Yeah, I've never seen him fight. Never had that. And I don't think I've ever seen him dump somebody for a win. Now that like when I'm really thinking about it, like yeah, I don't know. Oh, Martinsville, another one. I mean, they were joke. Obviously, the obvious joke of Martinsville making with Martin. But yeah, it's gonna suck to see him go. But I can't think of a better driver to put in the spot. Let's transition. Corey, you watched it. How stoked are you?
Well, first of all, it's the starting it with Chris Bell was the perfect thing ever. Kudos to JVR. That was brilliant and hilarious and like the perfect vibe setter of the entire afternoon's affair. But I mean, in the lost episode recorded a week or two ago, I kind of went through my internal struggles, right? Do I follow Briscoe to JGR and Toyota? Do I finally give in to what Finn's greatest fear was of me selling out and becoming a Blaney fan?
Lean into it,
I
baby.
know,
Lean
it's
into
fine,
it.
but I think I have called my shot. Chase Briscoe is a good dude. Something about rooting for him just speaks to me. He comes off as kind of like a humble underdog, like just a good dude who's there to work and try to win some races. And as a lifelong DC Sports and Commanders fan, I've kind of always had this little thing about like not rooting for Joe Gibbs. Or at least, I mean, like I always kind of did in the background. Like if a JGR
Right.
driver won, I was pretty much always good with it, except for at Charlotte. But but I just couldn't be more excited. It gives me a sweet. I get to unironically wear Bass Pro gear now, which is awesome for me.
Right.
As not a hunter or fisherman, which is not my thing. I'm not outdoorsy in any way. It's just going to be like the most hilarious thing ever to me. But I don't know. It's very cool, man. It's a competitive ride for Briscoe. I'm gonna get to see. You know what? He's gonna win a race.
Oh, 100%.
That's what's gonna happen.
Lock that
He's
in.
gonna win a race.
Yep.
I would love to see, and this was kind of as I'm sitting here listening to it. By the way, Chase did a great interview with Corey LaJoy on Stacking Pennies that just came out today.
I gotta go
like
peep it.
them starting, and then on Thursday they're gonna release the end of it where he goes through the whole thing. So definitely check that out from Corey LaJoy this week and Chase Briscoe. But just so humble, and I would love to see that 14 car get one win this year, just one,
Right.
like just win one race. While I'm a fan of the 14, that's all I want, like just one.
I wonder
And
if the weight of this, the future being settled,
yeah,
kind of lifts off his shoulders, and we see
buddy,
that kind of
they're gonna be so sold out at Phoenix. The
right,
14 is going buck
right.
at Phoenix. I guarantee it, dude. Like they're
Just go
they're
pull
gonna
like
break
Russ.
every rule. They're gonna push every button and every lever they got to try to get that final race in the 14 a win for the 14. So the end of this season is going to be cool to watch, especially like you said, now knowing that he's going to the 19. Getting to root for a Joe Gibbs driver. Jeff and I, same squad. Corey Russell, Camry guy. I mean, I couldn't be happier, man. Honestly,
Yeah.
like I'll still pull for the. It's really just make sure Chevy loses. As long as Chevy loses, I'm good, and that's kind of where I'm at. They're terrible, and they deserve to lose every race. They don't, but yeah, I will be following Jeff to the JGR hauler at whatever the first race that we go to next year is.
You mean that I have another voice when we go down to Charlotte to try and actually go to the JGR HQ?
Yeah.
Hey, we're locked into there next year, okay?
Next year.
You entertained me on Hendrick. I got to see the Garage 56 car. I got to do it all. We're going to Joe. I'm cool. All right. I don't hate it. All right. I'll wear a Sean Taylor jersey and everything. It'll be dope.
Yeah.
I think the 19 is such a match made in heaven for Briscoe. And the reason why is, I mean, where is Toyota the fastest right now? It's Kansas. It's Charlotte. It's these 1.5 miles where they just unload with so much speed. And yes, the downside is there's a lot of good 1.5 mile drivers in Toyotas right now. You know, we've got Reddick, we've got Bell. Hamlin is no joke at those tracks as well. Wallace is very, very fast, has a win at Kansas. But when I think about what's the difference between a 14 car and the 19 car outside of like the major thing is you're unloading with raw speed. Because there's plenty of times right now that the 14 has been in the final 10 of qualifying, right?
Sure.
But it seems like in that final 10, tires are cooked or something. He gets somewhere between sixth and ninth.
Top 10, but that's all they've got.
Sixth and ninth, and then something is going bad, right? And I will say this: the Discord is a little split on James Small. Not Discord, the Reddit. Reddit is a little split on James Small. A lot of people think he's kind of holding back with race strategies or whatever the case, but I do think that, you know, I mean, obviously with Sonoma, right, Truex and the field thing and running out at the very end, but I think James Small is going to be better than any crew chief that the 14s had. I can't say I've seen too many pit errors with the 19. Did they have one last week? Didn't they have a pretty...
They did just have one, of course.
Right, but again, Iowa, the 14 crew, he had a long pit stop, came out in 12th, 13th. Chase did, and then of course with the Hemrick caution, phantom caution, he gets trapped a lap down as a result, so has to fight back. So it takes a top 5 car, and you know he's finishing way in the back. I think he might have recovered a bit, but
like happens. But no one is going to sit here and argue that the 14 for the last 3 years that the 14 is a better ride than the 19.
Yeah,
no one's going to say that.
Right, and the tracks that they're good at are the ones that Chase Briscoe's good at, right? Like that's and also Chase being good at Phoenix might help a little bit, you know, in terms of, hey, what's this setup going to be? What are you running? What are you doing differently? Because Chase, despite being in the struggling Fords, has got speed at Phoenix, and that seems to be the one thing that JGR has not figured out. Bell seems to have a bit, but he keeps running into trouble in the championship race. I think he won a Phoenix race last year. Or maybe he won Phoenix this year. I think he might have won Phoenix this year, Bell has.
Yes, the beginning of this year.
But I can't say like Denny has had like raw speed there, and you know, because he's a pretty routine Final Four guy. So I'm curious.
Stable of drivers they've got at JGR now.
Dude, Toyota has stolen. I put this in text earlier. I'm surprised you didn't call it out. But this is, you know, they've got Reddick, they've got Wallace, they've got Briscoe. They've got Gibbs, they've got Bell, they've got Jones, that's 6 drivers that are under 30 or at 30, but pre-prime drivers that are either disgusting prospects or already Cup winners, right? I know Jones is in the 43 and Legacy is its own thing, but being in the Toyota camp alone, I wouldn't rule out a return to JGR for Jones or whatever, but just they're stealing talent like crazy right now. And if they could land like Barry or something in like a 2311 ride, I don't think that that's the likely landing scenario. I think he ends up taking the 34, but
or Gregson.
You know, Gregson's a name that could go. He's kind of faded. I'm not going to lie. He's faded a smidge. A couple rough races on some rough tracks.
Well,
spinning out.
Well, he faded his tail right into Bubba's door on Sunday.
It's just bad at SHR right now. Like they don't have any. The only time they have speed is when the track is wet. That's not a good place to be for a NASCAR team.
Right.
I'm sorry, it's just not. It's not good. The cars are slow. The running joke for me last year and the year before was, well, they put all the cylinders in the car, right? But that's if you're making that joke, and you guys, well, you mainly, Finn, have always been Briscoe's a wheelman. He's legit. He's legit. He's legit. And I'm like, okay, like
when are we gonna see it?
I haven't seen it yet, right? And it's like that's kind of where the whole like Blaney thing comes in. It's like Blaney's always up front. He was running second again yesterday or 2 days ago in New Hampshire. Again, Briscoe was in 23rd. Right. He was all the way at the back.
So to your point about like I've thought about a lot of your jokes about putting the cylinders in the car and stuff like that, and that's one of the things I'm excited for you.
Yes,
coming over to root for a Toyota ride, because I don't know if you're aware, but Gibbs used to run for Chevy.
Yes,
for a long time, and one of the things that started that transition was there was more of a feeling that Chevy wasn't consistently delivering what he was looking for, and Toyota made it a point to step up to basically like flagship JGR and went to Gibbs and essentially was like, we will get you whatever you need.
Right.
So one of the things that you're going to get with him moving over here to not just Toyota, but moving into a Joe Gibbs ride is now he's going to be able to have that car custom tuned to him in a way that he was never going to be able to get a Mustang tuned to him in the past. And that's one of the things I'm excited for in creating a new variation in what we're going to have on the track with the rest of the guys being able to meld to that, is that you have somebody who has their own strengths at certain tracks and has their own, like, it's a different skill set on a team that is trying to kind of put forth what its future is going to be. Briscoe fits that mold because of his age, of his skill, of his like current stature. Now coming out to a manufacturer and a team in which he's going to have the ability to have a manufacturer pay more attention to what he's going to do than he's ever had before.
And I didn't know this up until this week, or really just the last like 2 or 3 days, but Chase Briscoe's like best friend is Christopher Bell.
Yeah, I didn't know about that relationship either.
I did not know that.
That's
and
cool.
If you think about it, right, probably his closest analog in terms of age and style and all of this stuff is Chris Bell.
Right.
So like you already have someone on that in that building who kind of like the people are used to working with. They're kind of these like mild-mannered, sort of boring, low personality guys who are going to go rip you up on a dirt track. That's kind of like what they both are, right? So like you've got you're already he's stepping into a place where they're already used to working with a guy who's basically the closest you're going to get to Chase Briscoe without it being Chase Briscoe.
Right. So, it fits a lot of the Toyota mold right now too. I mean, look at Tyler Reddick.
Yes.
Like, he's in a very similar like camp to what you would generally describe. He's not really somebody you're going to go and say, that is this outlandish, loudmouth, hotshot guy. Like that's not that. Like Reddick fits that description for 2311, but also for Toyota as well. It's like there's a mold that we're seeing.
Yeah, it's exciting. I mean, I expect him to be a lot better at the road course races. People to forget that he was one of the top Xfinity road course drivers as well. During that 9-win season, he won the Indy road course race. and he's looked great. So for me, like, I don't know. Every track that Toyota's really, really good at is already a Chase Briscoe track. It's super exciting. Now, my question to you, Jeff, is what do you think the expectation is for Briscoe year one, and then let's say 3-year span, right? Because that's probably all that's guaranteed is probably a 3-ish year span. Like, what's a successful year next year, and then what is the expectations? Because I'll note this: no championships have been won in the 19 car, but they finished second 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
Once with Carl Edwards. Well, at a minimum once. It might have been more, but at a minimum once, he actually tied Tony Stewart. I don't know if you remember that. So that's another interesting piece of the lore, right? Because he's doing the reverse Tony Stewart, going from Tony Stewart's 14 to Joe Gibbs, and he's taking over the ride, the 19, that tied in a championship with the 14 that led to a tiebreaker leading to Tony's 3rd ring. So it's very interesting lore there. But yeah, what's that look like next year? A good year look like versus 3 years? What do you expect to see from Briscoe?
Well, honestly, like, I don't expect there to be a huge growth period, to be totally honest with you.
Yeah.
That's
Right. No
not
ramp
really
up.
what I'm looking for. I think the idea here is turnkey. One of the reasons why you're getting a guy like Chase Briscoe is because you've already had enough time to truly evaluate what he can do in a cup car. If you wanted somebody that you were going to, kind of that you were going to try and grow and everything else, you would have gone and looked down to your Xfinity team and bumped them up to the 19. You're trying to take something that's more of a turnkey project that you're going to sand the edges off and put into your fold that's going to actually be a fit. So to me, Chase Briscoe running in the 19, I expect at least a win next year.
Right.
And along with, like, I expect at least a win in a playoff appearance next year. Like, to me, that's baseline. Now, granted, things happen. It's an unpredictable sport. There's other things that could make the year a success if he doesn't get that. But the expectation should be somewhere in that realm. You should expect him to win. You should expect multiple top 10s. You should expect a couple of top 5s at least.
Yeah.
Now, in the 3-year plan, as far as what you're going, you expect by year 3 that 19 is in contention. There's not really much of an expectation for any kind of, any kind of a dip there. Your whole goal right now is to get as many Toyotas in that field by the time you get to the round of 8 and a round of 4 possible.
Right.
And this is your shot.
Right. What about you, Corey?
I mean, the standard at JGR, don't they have 2 drivers with 3 wins right now?
Right.
I mean, Ty Gibbs is
Ty Gibbs is being babied into the. We get it.
That's the thing. Like, you've got your project already. It's Ty Gibbs.
Right.
So, like, why would they go to get another young driver when, I mean, Briscoe just fell in their lap? If he is what you say he is, which is, I believe, a guy who went and won a championship in 9 races in Xfinity, or maybe not a championship, but he won 9 races in 1 year in Xfinity. Like, he's obviously got talent. No one's going to say he doesn't have talent, right? Now, SHR's Xfinity program is way better than the Cup program, but that's part of this equation. But first of all, if you're Chase Briscoe, this is a no-brainer. You're getting handed Bass Pro money. Like, here you go. Here's your Bass Pro money, and you're getting a way better ride. If you're JGR, the expectation is you are immediately expected to perform as well as Chris Bell right away. Like, whatever Bell does, you should be able to do, period. And I don't think that's an unfair assessment, right? We've seen that Bell is good. We've seen that Briscoe is good. Go do that. They have the data, right? They know that these 2 guys drive kind of this similar background-ish stuff, and go win 2 or 3 races next year. There's no reason why that. I'm going to be losing my ever-loving mind, by the way. I hope you're both ready, because
it's going to be sick.
Waiting, dude.
Like, Briscoe, like,
I'm just standing in front of the TV like, come on, dude. Let this be the one. Just let this be the one. If you're in second, come on, dude, you can do this. Like, just
It was so
punt 'em,
good.
dude. Just punt
Oh,
'em.
you want to
And
know the
he
fun
didn't
of
do it.
McDonald's? Well, you can't. I mean, you literally can't wreck Chris Bell. I think if it was anybody but a JGR driver, we see him say, "Ah, fuck it, why not?" But you know what? They were talking about Bell. I mean, how about him and Barry fighting side by side for about 3 laps on that track? He was holding his own and winning it right at the line.
You know what? They were both so like joyful at the end of the race. They just were like, "Yeah, it was a great race. It was super fun."
Right.
Like, that's 2 guys that are, that's the kind of guys you want on your team that can race each other respectfully and have a good time doing it. And I think, this is kind of a, like you said, a match made in heaven. This
I
is
think
really,
so.
really going to be great.
This is what I'm expecting. I'm expecting 2 wins and a round of 8 appearance. It's hard to say round of 4 because there's so many good drivers, right? Round of 4, who are you kicking out? Larson, Byron, Elliott, Hamlin, Blaney, Keselowski, Bell, right? Like, there's so many good drivers. Reddick, like, there's so many guys that are going to be so good and consistent. But if you are in the round of 8 and you are making that final push, right? You're in contention, right? Get to Martinsville. You possibly winning a race there, because I'll tell you what, Briscoe's really good at fucking Martinsville too. And he's taking over like the Martinsville ride. But that's what I'm expecting. I'm expecting to see 2 wins. I think he's going to win a short track. I think he's going to win in a 1.5 mile track. I think he's going to snag probably like Kansas or Charlotte. Like, I mean, the 600 next year, I'm going to be so stoked for, because that's going to be incredible to watch. 3-year plan, again, same deal. And I think I'm with you, Jeff. I don't think a championship is required, but every year for 3 years, we should be having multi-win seasons or deep playoff runs, right?
Well, right, exactly. Like, what you said, like, your year 1 is about my year 2.
Right.
Like, I say year 1 just for the sake that I'm going to give the guy some chance to get acclimated to a whole other manufacturer's ride and a team and everything else like that. But I expect to win. There's without question. I expect to win in the playoffs. Like, this should mark you another Toyota in the playoffs is what this should be. Or I shouldn't say that. It should continue.
Right.
The 19 being in the playoffs.
Right. Yeah. You mentioned something earlier, and I think a lot about like the pressure that got put on Corey LaJoie when he stepped into the 9. Right. And I'm going to take you, Corey, because you've been running way up front. You're iRacing lately, right? When you are all of a sudden the fastest or top 5 fastest car in the field, it takes a smidge different personality, right? It takes a smidge different approach to things. And in NASCAR, Corey LaJoie, you can't just throw somebody like that who's used to running in the mid pack in the 9 car and expect immediate result, because A, driving style, and B, they're just not used to being that fast. I know that doesn't make sense, but you're not used to being in a car. You've got to learn so much and without practice. But Briscoe is unique to me because he's constantly pushing the car to the edge. He thrives.
Ricky Bobby
He thrives when he's sliding at that. Again, what did we see this week in New Hampshire? A situation where everybody's going into turn 1 going, oh, fuck, and then just have him on the outside going, yeah, like ripping it. I mean, again, I'm going to go back and watch it. If he was 23rd when we put on wet tires and he cranked that to 2nd, I mean, who was I raving about at Iowa? Driving from the mid-teens up to 4th at the end of that race was Chris Bell. And then we get to see it. Like, that's crazy. Like, that's just a different level. And it kind of reaffirms how I feel about Briscoe. And of course, he's the NASCAR Reddit's darling. And, everybody kind of feels, I don't know. It definitely was more split. There's a lot more Briscoe haters than I thought. But the only thing.
The comment section on the YouTube live today was mixed at best. It was a whole lot of, I don't get this, it should have been Josh Berry, etc. etc.
Yeah, the same was like if you were looking through Twitter when the leak happened. Yeah, a lot of the replies were like, Briscoe,
dude, do you think the fact that Childers Rodney wants to stay with the 4 and James Small is locked in as the crew chief to that ride, do you think that might have affected any potential Berry move? Because I will admit, Barry has had more time up front, right? Barry was up front at Bristol, very early part of Bristol. We've been at a couple short tracks where Barry's kind of like, it's like, whoa, what's this guy doing here passing a bunch of cars? And I have changed my tune on him. I was pretty critical of him early in the year. Didn't feel like not that he didn't deserve being cut, but it was just like, all right, cool. I absolutely think he deserves a ride.
Dude, he's a kind of like a little bit of a nobody who got dropped in Kevin Harvick's car.
Right.
Like that 4 is like by leaps and bounds in my time watching the sport, the 4 is the best car at SHR, and it has never been close. Like it's just the best team at SHR by far. So it makes sense that Barry's kind of getting it figured out and is finding some speed, but there was never going to be a time when the 14 team was just consistently slaughtering the 14. It was never going to happen.
It all depends. I guess it all depends, right? Like, again, you entered and Harvick was the chief car, but it's Stuart Haas Racing. The 14 is always the flagship. But then again, Clint Boyer was in the 14 and Harvick came in with Harvick money and Harvick skill set. So it became the flagship car. But again, and I don't know how that works with next gen and how that used to be right back in the day. Like Joe Gibbs was the 18, but who's the real flagship car? Joe Gibbs the last decade has been the 11.
It's the 11,
right?
But that's what I was just about to bring up that same point, is that, like, I mean, this is the reason why I constantly rave of, like, Joe Gibbs without the 18 is criminal. Like, you have to have that car. That is the flagship car. But let's not kid ourselves. For the last few years, even in the tail end of Busch's tenure at Gibbs, like, the 11 was the flagship car.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, because this is where you're focusing the attention, the expectations, everything else for, like, what you're planning to do now.
Right.
So, that's what it is. And for what Corey was saying for SHR, I mean, for the last 4 years of Harvick's tenure there, like, he would have definitely been that flag. I mean, from at least 2020 on,
right?
Because that 2020 season was incredible. So.
Right. And he's the most funded, right? Like, the people that have been riding with that outside of a young Chase Briscoe have been Clint Boyer, Cole Custer, like, just not
Eric
big
Almirola.
names. Or Eric Almirola, forgot about them. And he's got money, but he doesn't.
Bacon boy.
So, no, I mean, either way, I'm super excited. It'll be interesting to see what's next is the 4 car. Oh, I meant to say this earlier. NASCAR, we're the only sport where we're allowed to you can announce where you're going to play next season.
Right.
Right. And it's very unique in that regard. And it's very interesting. It leads to some stuff. I think the storylines next year, Briscoe to the 19, plus whoever's in the 34, plus SVG. Does he come to Cup?
Dude, if Briscoe's leading in the 19, if he gets to the front of the 19 at Phoenix in that early in the season next year, your boy is going to be losing his mind.
Somebody lock his FanDuel account. He's gonna put his life. Corey just sold his house. He's putting it all down on Briscoe to win the championship. Send it. So.
Yeah, this is gonna be interesting times. We're looking
Camry guy, Jeff. Camry guy.
And with Legacy Motor Club, are we about to be a Camry podcast? I maintain
just reluctantly a Camry guy.
I maintain that if Jimmy Johnson stays in NASCAR and is dedicated to fixing that team, I will leave to be Legacy Motor Club fanship after Alex Bowman leaves the 48. I maintain it. Unless Eric Jones goes to the 48, then I'm doing it to spite your ass.
Camry guys unite.
So
I've been Camry shopping the last couple hours.
No. Briscoe gets announced and Camry. Oh Jesus.
He's gonna get a big 19 put on the side of it and everything.
If they sell badged number 19 Camrys, like with a nice sick little badge on the back of it from the Toyota dealership, I know what I'm getting.
Oh, welcome.
Corey, you're gonna look like a dude from Duck Dynasty next week, just decked out in Bass Pro Shops, camo, and
my chick's gonna love that.
Oh yeah.
Oh, you're wearing NASCAR gear and it's Bass Pro Shops too. That's great.
Work on your southern
accent.
Right
in down in Florida, man.
Yeah. Well. It's gonna be fun though. I can't wait, man.
If you listen, this is all I ask, and we can end the podcast on this. If by the grace of God we go to a race and Chase Briscoe wins in the 19, all right, and you're shrieking at the top of your lungs and banging the back of every bleacher chair you can get your paws on, and they ask you if you would like to go to victory lane, make sure you actually shake Coach Gibbs' hand.
Oh, don't worry.
Okay, don't brush him off like a certain individual did. And
you need to stop. You need to stop because we're creating stuff that did not happen. There was no brush anybody off. I stood behind the man and was near. At no point was my presence anywhere acknowledged. Finn is making it seem like I had an opportunity to shake Coach's hand, and as though like I wouldn't have acted like a teenager in the 60s shaking Paul McCartney's hand at that point. So we're going to stop that part right now.
My sources,
if we look at the photos of my happy goofy ass on stage with Denny, because I was just within 5 feet of Coach and am standing on stage with my driver at the time. Trust me, happy taking all opportunities I could that day.
His brain was not working. Even if this hypothetical scenario you have created actually happened, I wouldn't blame him anyway. Because
Jeff was in a
brain just turns off.
Wholesome blackout of craziness. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I got my NASCAR moment. I got to meet Jimmy. He won by 1.5 feet. You got to stand next to Denny fucking Hamlin in victory lane. So our goal for 2025 is to get Corey next to Chase Briscoe at a day that the man wins on a Sunday. Either A, we're going to strategically plan our races to his best ones.
For a Phoenix road trip.
We're about to go to every race.
Yep.
That's all we got.
We may not have to worry about rain, so...
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Hey, man, start saving money now.
You know what? At this rate, Corey doesn't even hate the rate anymore. Bring the wet tires, baby.
Oh, yeah. Every race. Every race. Richmond, I pray it rains in Richmond in August. Just rain.
I love it. I think we'll end it on that note. That's going to wrap things up for us this week. Please make sure you check us out on YouTube, Spotify, and iHeartRadio under the name Intentional Wreck. Please like, share, subscribe, tell all your friends. You can find us on Twitter at IntRecPod. That's at INTWRECKPOD. We are also on TikTok under the same handle. Find us, follow us, talk racing with us. And just so you guys are aware, we will have a Power Rankings episode coming up for you guys with the next couple of weeks. I know we're long due, so don't worry. That's coming at you. And yeah, we'll catch you next time for that.
Let's go 19, baby.
Later, y'all.
See ya.